Plastic waste litters the streets and seas, and we know it does not belong in our environment. Yet 3 billion people around the world do not have access to proper waste management. They need solutions. This is a complex global challenge that requires local solutions. Our vision is to turn plastic waste into an opportunity. There is a lot of untapped potential in the $4.5 trillion circular economy. We believe that we can stop plastic waste leaking into the environment and unlock value at the same time, simply by turning our linear economy into a circular one. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste and our partners are investing, kickstarting, de-risking, and scaling projects across the world. Each of them bridges the gaps in the plastic waste value chain. Every day, we rethink and redesign the plastic waste challenge. Now, we will collaborate and innovate to create high ESG impact while delivering attractive financial returns. We will connect capital to the plastic circular economy. Join us. Around the world, only 14% of plastic waste is collected. The rest ends up in the environment, and $120 billion of value is lost every year. Plastic waste litters the streets and seas, and we know it does not belong in our environment. Yet 3 billion people around the world do not have access to proper waste management. They need solutions. This is a complex global challenge that requires local solutions. Our vision is to turn plastic waste into an opportunity. There is a lot of untapped potential in the $4.5 trillion circular economy. We believe that we can stop plastic waste leaking into the environment and unlock value at the same time, simply by turning our linear economy into a circular one. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste and our partners are investing, kickstarting, de-risking, and scaling projects across the world. Each of them bridges the gaps in the plastic waste value chain. Every day, we rethink and redesign the plastic waste challenge. Now, we will collaborate and innovate to create high ESG impact while delivering attractive.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
A very
Good afternoon, Anirban. Good afternoon, Manish.
Excellency, good afternoon. This is Manish here. Nice to see you again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My pleasure. Thank you for inviting.
Good afternoon to you, sir.
I'd just like to inform all our esteemed dignitaries who have joined us. We'll be starting at 1:30. And once again, a very, very warm welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Excellency, just as an update, we've tweaked the order of speaking somewhat. So, of course, your slot remains where it is. It's just that, the conclusion and all will happen by Mr. Anirban Ghosh after you've spoken, rather after Mr. Amitabh Kant has spoken, as Mr. Kant wanted to leave by about 2.
Sure. Very good.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah, good afternoon. And Excellency, I'll just use this time to inform you FICCI is having its annual convention on 17th, 18th at New Delhi in Taj Palace. So we'll be sending you an invitation. So we would be grateful if you could join us. There is also a FICCI President's reception in the evening on 17th. So, and of course, on 20th with the MEPs, we look forward to another session with you.
Thank you. Yes, the MEPs are here on the 20th and 21st. So
Right. So I'm not sure what date has been fixed with FICCI, but teams are in touch. Okay, so Mr. Arun Chawla, our Director General, is also here. Welcome, Arun.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes, Arun,
perfect.
good afternoon to you.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you, sir.
afternoon.
Delighted to
Afternoon,
meet
sir.
all of you virtually. I hope we move towards better times now in future, and we can certainly meet in person.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, actually, we all were expecting probably the third wave around in Delhi, so we planned this virtually. But now, in hindsight, I was thinking we could have planned it physical also.
The day is not far, Manish.
Yeah, I know.
We will have physical meets.
Right.
Arun, incidentally, today we have the Chemical and Petrochemical FICCI Global Manufacturing Hub meeting. I'm
see.
actually taking this call from the hotel where our Minister Dr. Mandavi also came in along with the secretaries. So It was a 300 crowd, but everybody had to still be with a mask inside the auditorium. Yeah.
Yeah, that is there, of course. And many of the places I'm seeing that people are getting to remove their masks because they feel stressful. But I guess for the sake of others, we have to continue to use masks in any case.
That's true. So, Mrityunjay, we start?
Or
Yes. Yeah, we're just waiting for Mr. Kant. He's joining shortly. Sir.
Yeah, he's logged in. His office has logged him in.
I think, Mrityunjay, why don't you just make a call in his office and just check?
Yeah. Yeah. Good afternoon, sir.
Well,
Diksha.
yes. So a very good afternoon, everyone. This is Diksha Tiwari on behalf of FICCI, extending a very warm welcome to all of you to the FICCI Circular Economy Symposium 2021. We are indeed privileged to have amidst us a galaxy of esteemed guests and speakers for the symposium for the next 2 days. To our audience who have joined us live on our exclusive bike platform, I can assure you that the symposium will not only provide fresh perspective on the transition from a linear to circular economy model adopted by India, but also provide insights on the huge opportunities it has to offer through the various solutions, innovations, and best practices that will be deliberated today. So without any further delay, let's begin with our inaugural session, which is based on the theme, India, an Emerging Circular Economy Innovation Market. Today, we are honored to have with us some distinguished experts for the inaugural session. May I now request Mr. Arun Chawla, Director General FICCI, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO, Niti Aayog, Mr. Ugo Astuto, Ambassador, EU Delegation in India, other dignitaries on this virtual dais, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to this 5th edition of FICCI's flagship event, the Circular Economy Symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, this 5-year journey has been a rewarding and enriching experience, not only for us at FICCI, but for our industry members and all the stakeholders who have been part of this expedition. I say expedition because it is with the active engagement of our esteemed Circular Economy Committee members and through them the wider industry and government stakeholders that we proudly stand here and say that FICCI has been the pioneer in mainstreaming the circular economy agenda in our country. I must acknowledge that in this endeavor of ours, we have received a lot of encouragement from Mr. Amitabh Kant, and we hope to continue our work in tandem with this vision. When we started 5 years ago, there was a lot of interest in the subject. Global knowledge was developing and being discussed, but local context was missing. So through our series of knowledge papers each year, in partnership with Accenture, strategy, we have invested heavily in building upon the country-specific knowledge base, which is helping not just the industry and government stakeholders, but it is also of immense interest to national and global audience crusading this circular economy movement. Over the last 4 years, this symposium has brought national and international experts together and engaged around 900 delegates. For this edition, we are having more than 300 delegates from across the world, 45 speakers, both national and international. This year, we are also recognizing 8 awardees for their innovation in this space. So the theme for this year, circular solutions, closing the loop, is very relevant in the current discourse, where industry is actively engaged in developing new technologies and business models. At the recently concluded COP26, the First Movers Coalition was launched, which targets to support the development of low carbon technologies for hard to abate sectors. FICCI, ladies and gentlemen, is committed to play its part in establishing the required ecosystem. We intend to continue this effort by catalyzing cross-cutting collaborations and partnerships with government, industry, and multilaterals. With this, I once again welcome the dignitaries on the virtual dais, speakers from both the days, and delegates for being part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chawla, for your address and, of course, for setting the tone for the symposium ahead. I would now take this opportunity to request His Excellency, Mr. Hugo Estuto, Ambassador, EU Delegation in India, for his special address.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kant, Director General, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here virtually with you all to open this year's Circular Economy Symposium. And let me thank sincerely FICCI for organizing this 5th edition of the symposium, very timely in the wake of COP in Glasgow. Circular economy and resource efficiency have become central pillars of today's discourse concerning our ambition to work for a green, digital, and resilient model of economic growth. Resource extraction and processing of materials, of fuels, food, contribute to about half of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions. And more than 90% of the world's biodiversity loss and water stress. So our current linear economy simply is not sustainable. It accelerates the demand for raw materials, and this in turn aggravates resource scarcity, increasing the risk of supply chain disruptions. Now the concept of circular economy is meant precisely to address this challenge by keeping resources within the production and consumption system for as long as possible. The international community is coming together to address the problem, to face the problem of unsustainable production and consumption patterns. And let me quote here, for instance, the G20 Resource Efficiency Dialogue, where the EU and India are directly engaged. And India is soon going to hold the presidency of the G20 in 2023. Both the EU and India are also members of the Global Alliance on Resource Efficiency and Circular Economy. And the follow-up to COP27 will require actually a further strengthening of these collective efforts. In the past couple of years, the EU and India, the European Union and India worked together also bilaterally to develop a range of policy initiatives to deal with this urgent transition. We work together in drafting the resource efficiency policy in 2019, and the 11 sector-specific committees on circular economy, which have been created by Niti Aayog last March, are a very important signal in this domain. we intend to continue to strengthen joint efforts towards a sustainable and just transition, and in the framework of our EU India Resource Efficiency Initiative. As you may know, in Europe, we have launched a major policy initiative, the Green Deal. The European Green Deal includes a specific circular economy action plan. In our calculation for the EU, applying circular principles has a potential to increase GDP by an additional 0.5% by 2030, while creating around 700,000 new jobs. So it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity that we can take through innovation. We believe that India can follow a similar path in a whole of society approach, which means with industry, not against industry. And industry is an essential stakeholder if we want to achieve our goal of a more circular economic model. So let me conclude here by welcoming again initiatives such as today's symposium, the discussions and exchanges that you are going to have in the next few days. I'm sure they will increase the scope for collaboration and partnerships among all stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Suto, and it's indeed a pleasure to have you amongst us today. Well, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, it's our honor to have Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO Niti Aayog, amidst us today as the chief guest, recipient of several awards and accolades. It will be my privilege to now request him for the keynote address.
His Excellency, the Ambassador of EEC to India, Mr. Chawla, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me express my sincere appreciation for the continuity of initiatives, engagement, and keen interest of FICCI National Circular Committee in this fast emerging circular economy domain. Distinguished speakers will be exchanging views and deliberating on different subjects in the two-day-long symposium. Last year, we met on the same subject in June 2020. The time since then has been very challenging. The worst is over, and with 100 crore COVID vaccine doses to citizens, we can confidently look forward. Again, at the outset, important to point out that the Honorable Prime Minister at the World Environment Day and on the Independence Day has emphasized the critical importance of transition to circular economy. Niti Aayog considers that transition to circular economy principles would help improve resource efficiency, impart competitiveness, reduce social cost, and address environmental challenges, and provide new business opportunities. It would also help in achieving the Atmanirbhar vision of the Prime Minister. Globally, circular economy transition is happening through integration of circularity principles of new business models. Transition supported through public policy, that is regulations, EPR framework, and innovations. In India, though regulations for different waste streams have been in existence since 2016, implementation of regulatory provisions has been partial. The informal sector has been also active in many areas. Integration of informal sector in the new framework requires innovative ways. In Niti Aayog, we constituted 11 committees on circular economy. They covered municipal solid waste and liquid waste, scrap metal, ferrous and non-ferrous, lithium-ion batteries, tire and rubber recycling, gypsum, end-of-life vehicles, electronic waste, toxic and hazardous industrial waste, used oil waste generated from tools and machines, agriculture waste, and solar panels. We involved more than 200 stakeholders, comprising of businesses, academics, startups, consulting companies, recycling industry, regulators, BIS officers, and domain of experts, including experts from FICCI. The collaborative initiative has been extremely enriching. It identified the challenges and gaps that need to be addressed in short and medium term. We looked at the best practices from across the world, and the perspective goes beyond managing these as waste streams. We need to harness full economic potential, and given the sector-specific recommendations, we have taken a series of measures both on regulatory and developmental aspects. The broad learning from this exercise has been that existing regulations, extended producers' responsibility, recycling rates, etc., have not been fully implemented. There is a need for market development through standards of secondary materials and procurement. There's a need for innovation and technology support. There's a need for new business models offering solutions for the lifetime extension, remanufacturing, reuse, etc. There's a need for circular design focused on waste reduction and production processes producing or dependent on recycled resources. There's a need also for resource efficiency in the supply chain, reverse logistics, collection, separation, and recycling of used material. Innovative technologies are necessary to enable circular business models, and we need to what we found missing was the reverse logistic chains in different segments. Issues concerning informal sectors, and there are gaps in infrastructure, financing, and incentives. I'm delighted that FICCI and Accenture paper is being released today, Beyond Incrementalism, a pulse check on India's circular transition. And I have been through this report, and the report covers two aspects: the diagnostic of CE landscape and the role of India's circular economy transition in the decarbonization journey. The key barriers highlighted in the paper are aligned with the action areas identified in the Circular Economy Action Plan by Niti Aayog for the 11 selected sectors. The 5 calls to actions highlighted in the FICCI Accenture paper are establishing a national circular economy framework, strengthening the circular economy's ecosystem, accelerating technology adoption, supercharging the operating model, investing in creating market demand. The first 2 calls to action are embedded in the policy action plan spearheaded by the government and aims to create an enabling environment for circular economy. The latter 3 require rigorous initiatives to be undertaken by corporates. An important insight highlights that Indian business leaders are increasingly aware about circular economy and its role in decarbonization, but are limited in action. Accelerated actions on ground are key for realizing the benefits. It was also encouraging to note that 82% of those surveyed agree that circular economy is a comprehensive approach that extends to each part of the value chain, while only 18% view it as a waste management and recycling concept. Conditions that can essentially drive demand for investment in circular ventures necessitate compliance to regulation coupled with ease of doing business, progressively evolving requirement for collection rates, recycling rate, reuse, remanufacturing, and repair, and all gaps in development framework to be addressed simultaneously. This should not be regulatory driven solely. Voluntary commitments of corporates supporting transition to circular economy and the initiatives to create these conditions falls within the domain of regulators, businesses, and financial institutions. There are some learnings from the best practices abroad that can be applied in Indian context. In Norway, more than 97% of plastic bottles are recycled, and Norway has 2 key elements for making reverse supply chains work: public participation and infrastructure. Italy, very high degrees of used oil recycling, highest in EU, and the differentiating feature, the efficiency of the reverse logistic chain. And therefore, robust business models, public participation infrastructure, and regulatory environment are the key determining factors. The circular economy transition must happen through robust business models. And this depends on many factors, but the most important is choosing a pathway that aligns with the company's capability and resources. This model is sustainable only if value can be economically recovered from the product. Ladies and gentlemen, with better understanding of the circular economy landscape and the requirement of regulatory and development initiatives, some sectors can realize the potential expeditiously. Scrappage policy for ELV and regulations on EPR, framework for plastic packaging and other measures identified in action plans have generated keen interest by industry and will help shape the circular economy. I wish the success of this virtual circular economy symposium, and Niti Aayog will be very happy to take forward the suggestions coming out of the deliberation. I thank you all for the attention. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure participating in this conference.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your very insightful and informative address. And as mentioned by you, FICCI, along with its knowledge partner, Accenture, is pleased to announce the 4th knowledge paper on the subject titled Beyond Incrementalism, a Pulse Check on India's Circular Transition. We would now request you, sir, to kindly release this year's knowledge paper.
May I request all others to also kindly join?
I think even though it's virtual, we can still do a good thing at clapping. And thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the most awaited and exciting part of the symposium, the Indian Circular Economy Awards 2021. This is the second edition of these awards with exceptional innovative practices and ideas. We have the 2021 winners. So let's take a look at the awardees and their award-winning practices through this very short video.
We are proud to announce the second edition of Indian Circular Economy Awards. The ICEA are organized to recognize and celebrate those making progress in the circular economy space. A panel of 12 assessors from the industry evaluated a total of 48 applications from large-scale enterprises, SMEs, startups, and not-for-profits. A jury of 3 experts from sustainability, climate change, and circular economy space finally selected the winners and runner-ups in each category. Without further ado, we now announce the winners and runner-ups from each category. We begin the ceremony with the large enterprise category. We have joint winners in this category, and the winners are Tata Steel Limited and Ultratech Cement Limited. Tata Steel has established dedicated profit center for waste management, handled 13 million tons per annum (MTPA) for byproducts spanning across 20+ product categories, comprising more than 250+ SKUs to generate a revenue of 3,000 crores. Ultratech Cement Limited have adopted concrete recycling in their plants since inception. Use of red mud as additive helped reduce raw mix cost by 1.28 million tons, utilized 1.5 lakh ton waste volume by co-processing. They have achieved 3.96 times water positivity and diverted 44,000 tons of agricultural waste from open burning by substituting coal in cement kiln. In the SME category, the winner of the title is GRP Limited. GRP Group is into responsible production of reclaimed rubber with more than 300 suppliers. Every year, around 1.7 million of tires are being saved from landfill and reduction in 25,372 million tons carbon dioxide emissions. About 3,600 million tons of recycled nylon used, reduction in consumption of wood by 1,200 million ton, thereby resulting in 5,400 trees saved per year. The runner-up in SME category is Luthra Group LLP. They are an expert in undertaking the pre-processing of hazardous waste at alternate fuel resource facility, supplying the same as a fuel to the cement industry. The group has 8 numbers of such pre-processing facilities across various states of India, with alternate fuel supply at 250,000 plus million ton per annum, covering approximately 60% of the key industrial zone in the country. In our startup category, the winner is PadCare Labs. PadCare is an automated hygiene management system that generates harmless, recyclable output out of used sanitary napkins. multi-step mechanics, it breaks down absorbent sanitary waste into two byproducts, cellulose and plastic. NABL certified pad care processing unit is smokeless, silent and processes up to 3,000 pads per day into cellulose and plastic output. Our runner-up in the startup category is Recycle. They are a digital marketplace and provide smart center solutions for dry waste collection to ensure proper recycling. Currently operating in 28 states and 6 union territories and channelizing more than 20,000 million ton of waste each month. Partnering with 70 plus urban local bodies, ULBs, 100 plus brands, 150 plus recyclers and 500 plus aggregators. In the non-profit category, our winner is Birla Institute of Management and Technology. Ever since 2009 onwards, the institute has been taking actions to reduce its carbon footprint through various energy efficiency measures. Their various initiatives include plastic waste for road construction, activated carbon from waste or spent coffee powder, pavement blocks from slag, flooring tiles and building blocks from waste marble dust, heat insulation blocks from stone dust, etc. Runner-up in non-profit category is Society for Child Development. Being an NGO, they provide skill development and livelihood to marginal and disabled strata of society through various initiatives like Trash to Cash. Their famous Ava Kayam initiative is to recycle flowers that are left behind in temples and hotels to organic skin-friendly colors. Congratulations to all the winners and best wishes to scale new heights in their initiatives.
Thanks for joining us for this award presentation.
Yes, absolutely. Congratulations to all the winners and of course their best and innovative practices. Unfortunately, Mr. Kant had to leave for an unavoidable meeting, but we thank him for his presence, for the reason why which we also had to readjust our agenda a bit. However, moving on, we are privileged to have amidst us Mr. Janardhanan Ramanajalu, Vice President, Regional Head, Southeast Asia and Australia, SABIC. I invite him now to deliver the industry address.
Good afternoon, everybody, and His Excellency, as well as my fellow panelists. It's an honor and pleasure to be here speaking in the circular economy. For me, this is an old passion. I've been even speaking from the LCA conferences many years ago from FICCI. So this is a continuation. I'm going to quickly, is my slides going to be put on, if you don't mind?
We'll just do that.
So this is an industry view of how we imbibe the circular economy and what typically a leader in the chemical industry is doing. And do I have the control to change the slides? Yeah, thank you. Can I change the slides myself, or somebody is going to move it for me, please? Mr. Mrityunjay, is somebody giving?
Yeah, we are giving the host right, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'll wait for a second. Sorry, apologies for that small delay. We are under tight time control, so I'm trying to make sure or I could just request somebody to move and I'll give a cue and then you can move it. Yeah. If you can just move the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So the big challenge, environmental challenge, we all know there are a lot of materials we use. There are huge benefits in various ways in lightweighting, shelf life extension, safety, aesthetics. These are all the benefits which we give it to the consumers of all kind of products and services. But what results as a post-consumer waste, there's a lot of issues to be solved in every industry, be it in plastics, be it in steel, be it in automotive industry, construction, electronic industry. So those are the issues which need to be solved. And the circular solution is the one which is going to get us into a better place than where we are now. The next slide will just give, the next slide please. This is just to show that how the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030 and how SABIC as a company has imbibed it into its sustainability priorities and into its sustainability strategy, which is again part of the overall business strategy. So sustainability has to become part of business strategy. And then organizations need to connect what are the sustainable development goals overall, along with what they do in their own business, and see how they can connect these two. For instance, for a chemical industry, this would be resource efficiency, this would be clearly environment, health, and safety. This would be circular economies very much in terms of recycling and innovation, which is focused on sustainable solutions. I mean, innovations happen all around, but then if you add an additional gate to innovation, which is that it has to cross a certain sustainability threshold targets, then it becomes an innovation focused sustainability strategy. The next slide is quickly to give that we are quick off the block since we started on this years earlier. The next slide would give us a complete portfolio view. Yes, thank you. We have called it True Circle. In fact, even our brand carries the word circle. So it's not circular economy in action, it's also an implementation. So a complete portfolio of a chemical company like us, it looks typically mechanically recycled products, which all of us know has been happening for quite some time. Certified circular products by chemical recycling. I mean, this is high technology, and this is something we can do with all the mixed waste where you are not able to circulate in a two-dimensional way. You could turn it back into its original oil molecules and then refeed and bring it back by chemical recycling. Certified renewable products, and we could also use renewable products into a reuse and recycle mode and then create petrochemical chemical products. Those are the three topics, and everybody knows mechanical cycling. I'm not going to talk about it, but then a lot needs to be done. How do we design for recyclability, which is where a lot of our scientists, engineers are working with all the applications which normally you see in life. Closed loop initiatives, which is very important. Closing the loop, which you all heard, this is pretty much a part of a service because it needs education, it needs design, it needs innovation, it needs collaboration with the entire value chain. And let me quickly take you to one example of each of these 2-3 major topics. If you can move the slide for me, the next one, please. Yeah, this is a very advanced chemical recycling waste plant under construction, expected to come on stream in 6 months' time with our collaboration partner, Plastic Energy. And you can see that this uses all mixed plastic waste, turns it back into its gas and crude oil, almost brings it back to the oil stage, and then refeeds into a cracker to bring it back into a petrochemical feedstock. And this is one of the world's largest plant under construction of this scale. There will still be many more to come. This is one of the first ones. And that proves the chemical recycling concept in reality. Theoretically, it can be done on a lab scale, but on a commercial scale. And a lot of brands have got onto this product, and then many of them are happy to take this product already, what we do on a much smaller scale. That's the chemical recycling. Technology is proven, plants are up and coming. And I think that can be done more because mixed waste is one of the biggest issues in the petrochemical value chain. So taking it back to crude oil and bringing it back is proof of concept and actual execution. The next one shows what we can do in the recycling concept of all the organic material, be it oil from wood, be it your cooking oil, be it any other industrial oil, which is coming from a renewable source. All of them can actually be collected, again, taken back into its molecules, because all of them have hydrocarbons basically built into them, and produce very advanced, very sophisticated product like polycarbonate. And we have a complete portfolio to do that. This is a certified polycarbonate and its blends coming through this organic. So this one is the renewable recycling proof of concept and actual execution. and it has to be scaled up. I think much more can be scaled up. Some countries, as Mr. Amitabh Kant said, have very good recycling, particularly Italy. You mentioned about the food oil. So I think this is one example where you could use even things which come from a food industry back into petrochemical and recycling. The next one is just to show that all of this is not going to happen in the next slide. With a lot of services, you need a lot of scientific basis, LCA calculation, life cycle analysis calculations, mass balance is a valuable molecule. Innovation has to be targeted for circular products. And circular products need to be applied. They will not be applied in the same way as original primary polymers and products. So a lot of education service needs to be done. Those who are higher up in the value chain need to take over that responsibility, because people at the front end of processing these products of recycled products will not have access to all this knowledge, including consumer education. So that's a complete portfolio one needs to absorb. It's not something you can do selectively, and that's all in action. I just skipped the mechanical part because everybody knows. Can I have the next slide quickly to come to a conclusion? I want to give you one more example of actual closed loop collaboration. So you can see in this FICCI products bought by a big company who manufactures packaging like Sealed Air, produces products which are going to Bradbury's, which are packaging the cheese. Tesco is the one which is selling. Plastic Energy collects all this back, turns it into its molecules, which goes back into the SABIC plants and produces and that's a complete collaboration of the value chain. This is a full closed loop in execution. And the products are good, of course, each one is branding their product, but this is in reality happening today. And I wanted to just give you one example. We need many more closed loop collaborations. This is just one proof of concept, but this has to scale up in a much bigger way. The next one is another example I would like to close with. This is the attempts to do a circular economy cannot happen by any one industry sector. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste is one of the biggest alliances which have come up in the world. SABIC is a founding member of this alliance. This point in time, it now includes all the brands, all the food processing units, including people like Unilever and P&G, the full value chain, and that includes members who are in the recycling value chain, the machinery producers, because you also need specialized machines to be produced. This is a complete collaboration, and one example of closed loop you saw, and I think, like Alliance to End Plastic Waste is carrying on many projects, which is a closed loop cycle, and I wish them success. I think they have a session in this much later on. Can I come to my last slide, and then there I stop, please? I have one more slide, which is just to show, this is recycling its top honors. So the Tokyo Olympics medals, they're actually made with almost 78,000 tons of electronic waste, the precious metals extracted, and the Tokyo Olympic medals, where 5,000 of them were made. So I think recycling at its highest honor, has its highest honor in Olympics. With that, I just stop my perspective from an industry and hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jonathan, for that very insightful and very comprehensive presentation. No wonder they say the future is SABIC. Thank you so much. Well, moving on, we had Mr. Kant releasing the knowledge paper, but I would now like to welcome Mr. Sandeep Singh, Managing Director, Accenture, to present the findings of the knowledge paper, Beyond Incrementalism, a pulse check on India's circular transition. So can we have his presentation, please?
Thank you, Diksha.
Thank you.
All right. So good afternoon, dear friends and distinguished guests. It gives me immense pleasure to be sharing with you the key findings from the report that we have co-created alongside FICCI this year. At the outset, I would like to thank FICCI for the opportunity to be their knowledge partner in producing these reports of national importance for the last 4 years. What I intend to do in the next 5 to 7 minutes is, one, quickly give you a little bit of a background about what this study has been all about, how have we gone about conducting these studies, and then more importantly, also talking about some of the key findings that we have identified through this organizational study that we have conducted in partnership with FICCI. So with that, let's get started. If you could go to the next slide, please. So as some of you might be aware, this is the fourth study that we have conducted in the last 4 years. In about 2018, we had started this collaboration kind of an activity alongside FICCI, where we created the first of its kind of a study where we try to demystify circular economy in the Indian context. What we found was that there is almost about $500 billion worth of opportunity that India as a nation could realize by 2030 just by adopting circular economy business models. What we did thereafter in the next 2 years was actually deep dived into some very specific sections, some very specific industrial contexts to see what exactly are the ways in which circular economy manifests itself in the form of some tangible opportunities. Now, this year we have tried to do something different. This year what we did was we took a back step. We said that let's take a dipstick view of where the industry is. What are the business leaders thinking about circular economy? It's been about 3 years since we started this journey with respect to accelerating the adoption of circular economy business models. What are the leaders really thinking about circular economy models? What are their pain points? What are their opportunities? What are their perspectives? And with that objective in mind, if you go to the next slide, what we did was we identified these 2 key objectives for the study. First, really understanding the voice of business leaders in India, understanding the current status and the outlook with respect to circular economy through the lens of circular economy leaders in the country. And then also, this study comes in the backdrop of COP26, where we have had some really ambitious commitments, some big announcements coming in. As a nation, we are all aware that we are on our way to become net zero by 2070. So really want to think also about what does circular economy have to do towards really shaping that journey towards becoming carbon neutral. A little bit about the methodology. If you go to the next slide, please, Diksha. Now, this is really a study which is being conducted through the voice of business leaders. We have conducted an online survey as a starting point where we kind of received responses from about 50 leaders. We had some one-on-one discussions to really validate our findings, really stress test some of the insights which came from our discussions. And then lastly, we also did some research. We looked at about 100 top companies with respect to market capitalization to understand where are they with respect to their circular economy practices, what are the benchmarks, what are the gaps, and those kind of insights. So with that context set, let's now very quickly turn our attention to the key findings. Diksha, if you could go to the next slide, please. Now, here is the first big finding from the study. What we have seen is that business leaders in India are fairly high with respect to their awareness of their understanding of the circular economy business models. Almost 97% of the business leaders that we spoke to identified and agreed that they understand the value of circular economy models. How does it relate to their business outcomes? What is still kind of catching up in the Indian context is that this level of awareness, this high level of awareness is yet to translate into that similar level of commitments and ambition. And if you see on the right-hand side of the slide, what we have is that about 24% of the leaders told us that they have already announced commitments with respect to operational waste going to landfill. How do they want to minimize it? There are about 11% of the CEOs who told us that they have targets with respect to product services and recirculation, but the number keeps dropping. So essentially the first key message that we observed is that while the awareness level is about 97%, with respect to the announcement of commitments and ambition, the number is still less than a quarter of the leaders that we spoke with, which alludes to the fact that there is a little bit of translation of awareness to commitments that can happen in the coming few years. If you go to the next slide, please. On the next slide, what we want to call out is the second key message that emerged from our study. And this is where we started to deep dive a little bit with respect to the different types of business models that one can think of with respect to circular economy. So in our preceding studies, we have called out these 5 distinct business models, business models like circular inputs, resource recovery, product as a service, and so on and so forth. We were curious to see what is the level of adoption of each of these business models when it comes to the adoption of CE practices within India. What we found was that the first 2 models that we have, which are more material focused, things like circular inputs, how do we transition to more sustainable raw materials, or things like resource recovery, which is more about downstream waste management. With respect to these 2 business models, there is fairly high level of adoption in the Indian context. where there is still some gap or some opportunity to kind of embrace the models more holistically, are the next three, which are not necessarily material focused, but more product focused. So how do we start to think about product as a service? How do we start to think about extending the useful life of a product, or even thinking about sharing platforms, which can help us increase efficiencies exponentially? So that's the second big finding that emerged from the study. If you go to the next slide, please, Diksha. Now, in the third, key message that I want to share with you, which emerged from the study, was really thinking about what are the different levers or drivers of circular economy adoption in India. And we looked at two key perspectives. One, from the lens of business value, and second, from the lens of stakeholders. So from the lens of business value, what we found was that, yes, reducing costs and increasing revenues are important, but they are still not the primary factors or primary levers which are nudging the leaders to really adopt circular business models. The first and most important criteria continues to be brand value or reputation, which probably is an opportunity as we move forward with respect to our levels of maturity with respect to circular economy models. It's evident that, like some of the Western countries, the linkage to financial value, the linkage to reducing costs, driving revenues would become more explicit and more obvious as companies start to embrace circular business models. And from the lens of stakeholders, our question really to the business leaders was that, which are the key stakeholders who are actually influencing or helping accelerate the adoption of circular models? And what emerged was that, yes, as it stands today, the boards are getting involved extensively. Customers and consumers, their expectations, their changing demands is helping accelerate the circular economy models in India. But what we also heard was that regulators, which currently is about 3/5 of the participants who responded to the survey, they believe regulators are very important. And quite interestingly, what we also felt or recognized from the study was that the influence of regulators in the Indian context is expected to rise significantly. In fact, that's the stakeholder group which is expected to exercise largest increase in the influence on adoption of circular models as we move forward. Now, if you go to the next slide, please. Now, these were some of the big messages that we heard from the leaders. Now we started to turn our attention towards thinking about how do these business models, how do these best practices with respect to circular economy also kind of start linking back to our net zero ambition that we have recently announced. And from that perspective, what we did was we looked at the top 100 companies, analyzed their net zero commitments and targets. And what we found was that as it stands today, only about 10% of the companies, the top 100 companies, have SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative, approved net zero targets. So there are about 9 of those companies. There are additional 16 companies which have announced their net zero targets, though these are not necessarily SBTI approved yet. And then there are almost 3/4 of the companies which are yet to announce their net zero ambitions and targets. Now, with that said, the next key question that we turned our attention to was that how could circular economy really be adopted as a lever to be able to accelerate the emissions related agenda or our march towards becoming net zero as an organization and as a country in the coming years. So for that, Diksha, if you could go to the next slide, please. Now, this really is an illustration. What we have done is that in the study, we have analyzed 4 distinct sectors. What we have shown here is just a view of the cement and steel industry. I'll not drain this slide, but the key message that we found was that through a variety of circular economy initiatives, one could recognize or realize almost about 50 to 60% cut in the emissions by 2040. So what we did was we looked at the business as usual emissions for cement industry and the steel industry by 2040. And we also looked at what could be the emissions be if we were to adopt some of these circular economy practices. And what we recognized, as I said, was that there is almost about 50 to 60% potential in cutting down the emissions for these 2 sectors. So clearly calls out that circular economy is not just a construct to manage waste and drive resource efficiency and better material efficiencies, but it could also help us really link it back to our carbon neutrality agenda as a nation. And if you go to the last slide, please. Now, this is, based on all the discussions we have had, based on all the insights that we have observed from the survey, from the research, from the discussions, we have identified 5 distinct actions which we need to take as an industry. I'll not drain this because Mr. Kant alluded to some of these in his keynote address, but very quickly, if we were to talk about it, there is a need for a national circular economy framework, which clearly outlines the guidelines, the best practices, the benchmarks, need to strengthen the circular economy ecosystem. How do we make it more collaborative? Let's bring all the players together in a very collaborative, cooperative way. Role of technology in driving acceleration of circular economy agenda. There are 3 distinct types of technologies that we have talked about in the paper: physical, digital, and biological. Some good examples with respect to each of these 3 technologies. And then very specific to company-related actions. How could we supercharge the operating model? How do we really structure the organization in such a way that it is positioned and designed to really accelerate circular economy agenda? And lastly, creating market demand. Those are the 5 distinct enablers. So with that, I'll conclude this quick overview of the findings. I do hope you find this report useful as you start to think about your own circular economy agenda. And lastly, I would once again like to thank FICCI for their continued support and opportunity to work with them on this as a knowledge partner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Singh, for sharing these key findings with us. That was very useful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Anirban Ghosh, Chair, FICCI National Circular Economy Committee, Chief Sustainability Officer, Mahindra & Mahindra. And before I request him to deliver the theme address and concluding remarks, I would first like to thank him for being the host and chair, and also gracefully adjusting to the change in our session flow. So over to you, Mr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Diksha. That's the least I could do as the host of the session, as you mentioned. It's been an exhilarating conversation already so far. Mr. Chawla, Mr. Astuto, Mr. Kant, Mr. Janardhan, and of course, Sandeep. You've covered the subject in a great deal of detail. This is the decade for action when it comes to sustainability, and conversations on circular economy have slowly crept into the COP discussions. I don't recall conversations on circular economy at earlier COPs, but I understand that there were a few conversations at Glasgow. Keeping all of this in mind, and also in line with the suggestions that Sandeep just outlined from the report, we've tried to make this conference focused entirely on solutions in the circular economy space. Those of us who've been associated with sustainability in general and circular economy in particular, I don't think we need to reiterate that it is important, that it needs to be done, that it's a great thing. We already know that. It's time for us now to take concrete action to make circularity happen. The good news is that a lot of things have started happening already. Many organizations have come forward and have started initiating circular economy practices. Sandeep just presented a macro view of the whole situation. But we've also got the India Circular Economy Awards, and we would not be able to institute the awards if there wasn't a significant number of circular economy projects and practices being done by industry in the nation today. We are hoping that these sessions, which deal with various kinds of solutions, mostly related to materials, as Sandeep pointed out, that the focus on materials is much higher than the focus on circular economy business models. In fact, as I was thinking to him, I was wondering maybe next symposium, we should have a session on circular economy business models and get that conversation going so that all those of us who can in our own organizations can kind of work towards seeing which of these circular economy business models could be useful for our businesses. But one hope that all of us have in the Circular Economy Symposium team is that those of you who have taken or made the effort to come to the symposium and listen to all the presentations, we hope you'll at least get one idea that you can take back to your organization and include in the work that your organization does to enhance your business's resilience and also help us in our journey of making circular economy an important part of the Indian ecosystem, to get all the benefits, the multiple benefits that you've been hearing of from very many people, whether it be about an increase in overall GDP, or new jobs, or bringing down costs, or material efficiency and resource efficiency, or contributing towards being Atmanirbhar, or building new business models. In fact, something which may not have been mentioned. Imagine urban places like Mumbai, Delhi, Calcutta, or any other urban place not having a landfill. The impact it would have on the cleanliness of the city, and the impact it would have on air pollution, land pollution, and so on. It's been a childhood dream that I will one day live in a clean India. With the acceleration of circular economy, those of us who count our age in decades and not in years anymore may still be able to realize that childhood dream of living in a clean India, taking the work that's being done in many cities of the country, notably Indore, forward and spreading it all over the nation, both through our municipal bodies as well as through our industries, to get accelerated impact. We at FICCI and at CES are delighted by the steps that Niti Aayog has been taking. The formulation of these 11 committees is a very big step forward, and it is a part of creating a circular economy framework, something that is a part of the call of action in our knowledge paper this year. We are very keen and very eager to work with these 11 committees to ensure that the focus areas get implemented across industries. And I'm very happy that some of these committees are associated with the Circular Economy Symposium this year, and we look forward to shaping their work and helping them succeed, both through conversations and through actions on ground. We loved the in-person conferences when they would happen. And personally, I am missing the little tips that Mr. Kant would share during the inaugural conference, which would kind of guide us to taking the Circular Economy Symposium to one new orbit and another new orbit and so on. In fact, the institution of the Circular Economy Awards was one little thing that he whispered in our ears in an earlier conference. He's already suggested that we get back to him with our suggestions. Those suggestions will come from you. All those of you who are going to speak and all those of you who are going to participate in these conferences, please feel free to share your suggestions on how to take circular economy forward in our country. And we will be happy to have a discussion, a deeper discussion with the committees in the Niti Aayog, and see that your suggestions get taken up for action going forward. We've been able to do that in the past, and the association of Niti Aayog with the Circular Economy Symposium gives me confidence that we will be able to continue to play that role. So wishing you a very good conference and hoping that you will also get something out of this conference that you can practice in your place of work. Thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to a very, very good Circular Economy Symposium 2021.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ghosh. And yes, as you've mentioned, I'm sure that dream is shared by a lot to live in clean India with the acceleration of circular economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to all our industry experts. You have been listening to our esteemed and distinguished speakers. But I would also like to inform all the delegates here that the report about which we have been discussing will be available on the website www.ces.in by this evening, and you could all download it and go through it. May I now request Mr. Mrityunjay Kumar, Additional Director and Head, FICCI Quality Forum, to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Diksha, and thank you all the panelists for your insight and thought-provoking address. We are sure that the speakers lined up today and tomorrow will surely touch upon some of those points in the deliberations. We express our sincere gratitude to Niti Aayog and Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change for continuously endorsing the conference for the last 4 years. Our gratitude to you all for going to an extra mile to build the concept and for being available even at odd hours. I'm referring to all our committee members, and especially the chair. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to the National Circular Economy Committee members for their continued guidance. A special thanks to Accenture team for being associated with us for last 4 years, for coming out with the knowledge paper of national importance and supporting us in the working towards creation of knowledge repository accessible to all. We extend our sincere appreciation to all partners and thank you in advance to all the technical session chairs for both days. A special thank you to our speaker and presenters, and thank you to all our delegates for joining us. We look forward to staying in touch with you all, and we are happy to also share that the symposium is being attended by more than 300 delegates who have already registered from across the globe, and we are going to listen to 45 speakers across those 9 sessions, including some national and international specialists and experts. They are with us for next 2 days. So once again, thank you everyone, and look forward to a very, thank you everyone for the support. And next, I request Diksha to take over the proceeding for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. You have already given us an insight about how action-packed the symposium is going to be moving on from the inaugural sessions. So once again, thank you to all our experts, our esteemed guests and delegates who were a part of the inaugural session. We would be starting with the technical sessions in another 5 minutes from now. So it's a short break of 5 minutes, after which we would be starting with our technical sessions for the day. So be with us. And once again, thank you to all our guests who were a part with us for the inaugural session. Thank you so much.